Okay, now we're gonna, this week we're doing oblique sketches. And obliques are an interesting view in that they're not true to life when you look at them. If you look at the example, you see the front view of the object straight, vertical, perpendicular. You're viewing it at a right angle. But then your depth recedes away from you at an angle, and you can see the side and the top. In reality, you cannot see an object like this, because if you're looking straight at the front, you can't see the top or the side. So it's not a true to form view, but it is a good view to use with some items. Some items look more natural in an oblique view as opposed to an isometric view. So we're going to go over how to sketch these out. And the key to working with obliques is thinking about parallel planes in depth as you go back. So if we look at the top view of this object, we've got the front surface here, which would be this line. That would be our first plane. Then we have this line here, which is 1.5 squares back. That would be a second plane. Here we have a line, it's 2.5 squares back, so that's a third plane. Here's a fourth plane, and then the rear surface would be the fifth plane. So if you think of these as parallel planes working away from you, it makes it easier to draw these. And we center them similar to how we would do it isometric, a little bit different. I've already marked the center of my paper here. And what we do is we go down half of the height. So here my height is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. So I would come down 2.5 squares. And now we're going to do these obliques at a 45-degree angle because that's going to be easy with your with graph paper, because you can just line up on the corners of the squares. And I'm going to go ahead and line that up and draw me a little construction line coming down. Now here we want to go this down 45 degrees, half of the depth. And with this one it's 5 squares deep, so we'd go 2.5 squares. I'm going to measure, I'm going to use the ruler to measure on this, because if you count squares, it's not going to work out. So 1 square is 1/4 of an inch. I need to go 2.5. Excuse me. So that's going to be 5/8 of an inch. And I'll put me a mark. And then we're going to go horizontal half of the length. And with this one, my length is 14 squares long, so I'm going to go 7 squares across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to measure that just to make sure. Yeah, 1 3/4 of an inch. So that point would be the lower right corner of my oblique front view. And with obliques, oftentimes still, it's good to go ahead and draw in the shape of the front view. Okay. Now, since that's not on a grid, I'm going to shift it up and put it on an intersection of the grid lines, just to make drawing the front a little bit easier. I'll erase these things out. All right, so we said it was 14 squares long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 14. And with an oblique, you want to go ahead and draw your front view as if it were all on that front plane, even though it may not be, because we'll need that information. All right, and now we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tall. Okay, so I've got my box. I'm going to go ahead and draw in the front view things that are on this front plane. So that's down 2 and over 2. Come over 2 more to come down. Okay, and let's see, we have a hidden line at 5 squares back. And we usually don't draw hidden lines in oblique, but I'm going to put it in there because I'm going to need that information as I finish drawing. All right, and let's come on over with the two squares over, and then that comes down to there. Okay. So all I've done is I've drawn the front view inside of that box. Now I want to project back, and we said we were going to do it at 45 degrees. So I'm going to come to this corner and line my straight edge up so that it's hitting the diagonals of the graph paper. And let's see, that was 5 squares deep. 5 squares deep, which would be 1 1/4 inches. So I'm going to measure 1 1/4 inches back and put me in a vertical line. Okay. Now I know on this end it comes back in, and we've got a couple of jogs there, but I'm going to go ahead and lay out the top edge of that L right there. And they were like 1½ squares, which would be 3/8 of an inch. So I'll measure back 3/8, put a mark, come back 3/8. Okay. And so that's got the, if I erase out a couple of these things and kind of darken that a little bit for you. Okay, so there's my right side. These lines come back in, but they come back this depth back here. So I want to come to this point and project back at the 45 degrees also. And so these will come back in. Okay, so that's kind of got the L's there on that end. Now let's go back to the left side here. This stops here, so I can darken that all the way across. This one comes to here. This comes up. And comes back to there and comes down. Okay, so what I've darkened is what's on that front plane. Now we have to recede back, and so we want to line up at 45 degrees again from the corner. And I'm going to go ahead and come to this corner and do the same thing. And project that back. And then I want to do the same down here at the bottom. So everything that has a change of direction, I'm projecting that back. Okay, so I know my depth was 5 squares, so that's 1.25 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and measure back to establish where the rear of the object is. You can see that this only comes back a certain depth. That continues to go on across, so I'm just going to draw it out a little long. It goes to this point, so I can project that. I don't want to confuse you. This is getting a little bit confusing here, so I'll darken in what is finished when I finish it. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to take this corner that we drew at first, and I'm going to project that back at 45 degrees to the rear. To this point, and that's where the rear, the 5th plane back, goes to that point, and then it comes down and intersects with the bottom here. So I can bring that down to there. Okay, so that's got the rear of it, and now that it's 2.5 squares both ways. So I can measure either one of them. 2.5 is going to be 5/8 of an inch. And so there it goes horizontally to that point, to where it intersects with this line, and then it comes down to where it will intersect with that line, like so. And now I can darken those in for you. Here we've got this comes down to there, and then that goes across to there. And now it's just a matter of erasing and cleaning up. Okay. And so there's my, oh, I forgot this line right here. Finish that, finish that. Okay, so, and that's my, that's what the finished object looks like. Here's a nice clean version, all erased up. Remember to put your class, the assignment number, and your name in the bottom corner of your paper and turn that in.